is up, folks? It is time for the High Tech Podcast. If that was not the podcast you meant to be listening to and you're very confused, well, good luck. You're here now, and you should commit. So I am Josh, one of the co-hosts of the High Tech Podcast, joined by my other co-host, the great, the awesome, and basically British now, Will Illingworth. What's up, buddy?
Hey. It was absolutely the first or second day where I tried to do an accent and somebody looked at me across the table and I was just like, "Will, stop." What Josh is referencing is the European tour I was just on in London and Ireland, and I have a tendency to try accents, and I was told not to after I tried it. So, oops. But yeah. No, I'm not British yet.
Oh, dude, it's fine. Yet. And we're also joined by the great, the amazing Chris Crosdale, who is still, to this point, the only guest who's been in our introductions. So we don't know how to handle it. We don't know what we're doing. So Chris is just kind of chilling until we know what we're doing. What's up, Chris? How you doing, buddy?
Hey, guys.
This is when Chris takes over, right? You just gonna do the socials for us?
Okay, yeah. It's just basically the introduction. I do have a question for Chris, though, before we even get into the socials, which is, Chris, did you get married?
No.
Following your social media. And I needed to know. For context, folks, we joked that, we joked on the last episode that Chris, will post things on social media, and sometimes Will and I will be confused about whether his location / what he's doing, and I open up social media and Chris is posing next to somebody in a wedding dress. You know, there's what's that all about?
You are the 10th person today to ask me that question. and it's only Tuesday. So
fortunately, I'm not logged into Instagram on this device, so I can't get there. I'm at your profile, but I can't get to the post though. Well.
So let me explain. So a friend of mine does wedding and elopement photography, videography. And she's pretty well known in the Philly, Harrisburg area. So she got a publication deal to shoot wedding photography for a placement in a Philly magazine. And she asked me to be the male model as a husband and to be paired with another model that would be the wife for this editorial placement, which was done to highlight that Longwood Gardens is now accepting weddings, just weddings, engagements, etc. But also to highlight her style and vibe and all that. So we did that shoot 2 weeks ago. And she posted the shots on Instagram and I shared it because I thought they were amazing. And immediately I got DMs and text messages and phone calls
you're off the market?
You eloped and didn't invite me to the wedding. I was like, guys, I'm not married. It was I was modeling.
Of it was Will and I. We were just you're off the market? Wait, what? No,
yeah. Come on.
So yeah, I'm so single and ready to mingle. Yeah.
For all the High Tech Podcast listeners,
the lean in wink was just no, but so wait a second. Does that make of me a bad friend for not bugging you? I'm not one of those people who reached out oh my God, are you getting married?
No, no, you're not a bad friend. Honestly, I was expecting you to find out at some point. So
I guess assumed Chris was modeling. I just really wanted to put him on the spot. That was all. Anytime I see a picture of Chris that looks very produced on social media, I'm like, oh, look, they got a hold of Chris to be a model again.
Yeah, I've done about 6 or 7 modeling gigs, which is just friends who need a model ask me to do it, and I always say yes. So I don't really.
Yeah. I mean, that's still a level up from Will and I. I don't remember the last time a friend asked me to be a model. I can tell you when. Never. Probably when I was a baby. That was it.
Oh,
I don't like baby Josh be a model. That was it.
Baby.
Will, were you gonna say you've been asked? Were you?
I have done male modeling twice. Yes.
Oh, snap.
For friends or like actually
That's what I'm talking
professional? Did
about.
money exchange hands?
I was paid in both the tours. Yeah.
What?
Might be 3 times. One was Marissa worked for a dress shop here in Lancaster, and they were doing something. So like I put on a suit and went and walked around and whatever. I don't know. The other was I was a teenager and I went to a mall and literally walked down a runway, like in the center of the mall. They set up a whole thing. I walked
this. I must see a video of.
I need this right now. Yesterday.
Listeners to the podcast, if you agree, make sure to hit up every social media we have with the hashtag release the Will cut. I would like the.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny.
That's all I'm saying. On that note, we have social media because Chris runs it. It's great, and it's a great time. So, Chris, tell them where they can find us.
You can find us on Facebook. No, not Facebook. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, LinkedIn, also regular YouTube.
I'm dying because our social media manager's first social media option is literally the only one we don't have.
Listen.
Do you want? Wait. Are you telling us something? Do we have a Facebook?
No. You don't have Facebook.
You can go ahead. I'm not gonna do it. You can do it.
Yeah. No. We don't have one. It was a Freudian slip.
It's fine. It happens.
I'm pretty sure that we have a Reddit though.
We do have a Reddit.
That is correct.
Will got a Reddit. We would never talk about it, but we do have one.
Okay, cool.
Very cool. Folks. Go ahead. I was going to do the spiel,
your spiel.
Very organized. This is solid. This isn't going to get edited at all. So for you listeners, here's reality. Yes, we are the High Tech Podcast, brought to you by Harness Tech, and you can find us on all the socials except for Facebook at High Tech Podcast or at High Tech Pod. One of those things, you can find us there. You can also email us at inbox@hightechpod.us if you'd like to get a hold of us and tell us how great and solidly transitioned this intro was. You can make sure to email us that at inbox@hightechpod.us. And we have a website, hightechpod.us. You can make sure to head over there to check out all of our episode pages. It's super fun. We do fun things. Chris's photo will probably be there. Probably the model wedding one. I'll just drop that. We'll put that up there, but make sure to hit up the episode page. Anyway, that's the spiel of the social medias. So there you go. That's what we got so far. This episode, though, so little fourth wall breaking, since I don't know if we can call it that anymore because there's never been a fourth wall on the High Tech Podcast. It's just the normal us talking. Chris was only supposed to be on for one episode, but then we ended the conversation that had nothing to do with this originally, which was just we asked Chris at the end of our last episode, if you caught it, episode 163. Make sure to go listen if you haven't listened to it. We asked Chris, is social media destroying the world? Because we thought it would be fun to throw Chris a super easy ball question as our social media manager. That led into a great conversation, and we joked at the end of the episode that we should continue this, and we were serious, so we decided to continue it literally this episode. Because I think it's a for those listening, right, we brought it a bit from Just Ed Tech, but it's definitely an ed tech conversation. We had a similar conversation to this like a year or so ago on the High Tech Podcast. We were talking about social media, but Will and I were more targeted on like how it was impacting how kids interact in that episode, and social skills and things like that, which we kind of agreed last episode. We do think it's impacting that in some ways. But it's also a larger conversation in tech and work and a lot of things. I think a lot of people have different takes on social media and what it's doing. from the is it ruining the entire world take to just the impacts of it, right? And I think where we started to get into last episode was no, none of us really believe social media is ruining the world, except for maybe Will on his like tinfoil hat days, as was the joke.
I need a hat. I need to like have
you need a tinfoil hat for when I make those jokes. Yeah, that you can just like plop on. But we got a little bit into how social media is not necessarily the problem. There's a thing in humanity that seems to be the issue. We kind of talked about it, which is, I think the general argument, and this will be all the left I say at this point, and I'll leave it to the two of you guys to jump in, which is, I think there's often this argument that because of social media, all of us are meaner. Social media like makes us meaner, and makes people worse interacting with other people. And that's why it's kind of ruining the world. I think that's the take I see most often. Do you guys feel like that's a fair evaluation of the overall kind of, that's a generalized statement, but
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Well, one of the things that makes me think of first is generally making the world meaner or whatever. I think we've already poked at this button a few times. Like, we think people are generally pretty mean on their own, but what social media has absolutely done and changed is the time or the time frequency of access. You know, we were just on my trip to Europe. We went to the Titanic Museum, and I learned that the Titanic was not a cruise ship. It was a cruise liner, but it served two purposes. A cruise ship serves one purpose: take people on a cruise. But the Titanic was both a cruise liner and a mail courier. When it went down, it took some, like, I'm just going to make a ridiculous number, I can't remember exactly, but like 300,000 letters down with it or something, right? When I heard that, I was like, whoa, horrible. The Titanic, catastrophe is horrible, but it was going to be a weeks long trip to take 300,000 or whatever letters across the Atlantic. And we can't even fathom that today, right? There's no distance between something happening in Arkansas and someone hearing about it in Moscow, if Moscow is listening to anything happening in Arkansas, right? But that time thing is significant, because now the few mean people and the few mean things that are happening are the things we hear about first and the most. And so we weren't ready. I don't, humanity isn't built to do that. If Josh says something to my face, I can react to it. But if Josh says something to Chris, who says it to so-and-so, who says it to so-and-so, who eventually says it back to me, I don't have that moment where I'd be like, Josh, what? Why'd you just say that? Such a mean thing to me, right? Like, the message might have changed. I might not care by now. Josh may have taken maybe it was a joke and it was heard out. Like, there's so many things that happen when we can slow down the transmission of information. But when it's immediate, like social media can do for us, we just hear it. We feel it immediately. And I think that is different. I don't think that was ever the case. We didn't get information that quickly. If you did it on your street or in your village or whatever, right? You could hear it from the person in front of you, in a sense. But I think that's something that is significant to the social media problem. It's the time. It's immediately available to us at all times. And that's part of why we now have things like media fasts and stuff, like, right? Like, we wouldn't like put it down and go, oh, I need to not use this for an hour if there wasn't the fact that we are using it for the other 23 hours of the day.
Yeah, Will makes a great point. I think that in this think tank, if you will, social media as an entity can be / is a problem, but is not inherently problematic. Like, I would argue it is a tool. It is a media instrument that can be used for both good and bad. And oftentimes it's usage leans on the bad side, but that doesn't make social media responsible for the byproduct of how it's being used. So that would be my, like, I guess, different point of view, while still agreeing with what Will said.
That takes me right back to, though, like, college. I don't know if either or both of you took the class, but can't think of the name now. But one of the big points of the class was Marshall McLuhan's medium is message is a medium kind of conversation of, like, is the nuclear bomb evil? Is social media evil? Is technology evil? Can we ascribe or assign a moral assessment to a thing, a concept, or whatever, when, if left by itself, it, you know, a bomb, a stick, a rock, a gun, whatever, if left by itself, has no animus, it has no spirit, it cannot act, right? But if it's made for negative purpose, does that mean it's negative? Does that mean it's evil or wrong? I do, as much as I tinfoil hat and as much as I hate Facebook and many other social medias, I know the good, right? I think they are really innovative and interesting tools. You know, I have been using, I think we made jokes in the last episode about, like, Xanga, LiveJournal, and some of the early ones, but, like, I've been using social medias probably since I was 12 or 13 years old. Like, nowadays, like, oh, that's kind of a badge of honor for a millennial, but, like, kids use it at 5. They're just born into digital tools and social media. You know, I think it's interesting even to say of the parents who, I'll see some parents blur their children's faces in photos or put something over their faces in digital photos because they're trying to respect the fact that the child doesn't have a say in that, right? Their face now is being put out there into a digital world. So I appreciate that there's a spectrum of approaches. There's people who put every single picture out there, people who edit and blur and try to retain some privacy and digital autonomy. But I lean towards the social media is negatively impacting the world. Is it ruining? No, but I am not a fan. I hear you when I hear that there's good, and I hear that it is not. I would agree it's not morally evil, but I believe it is tends to have a negative effect over time.
So I think there's an interesting thing popping out of this, right? Like the key I think we all agree on is social media in its essence, right, is not it doesn't have like a moral component. Like it's a tool, whether we use it right or not. I think Chris, you might have said it, or I might have said it last episode, or basically like, stop blaming social media for what you're doing. Like that's not making you do anything. But there is an underlying argument here, which is that, is social media still enabling us to be worse, right? I think that's a question that needs to be asked, right? Is that it's less about, is social media itself destructive? I think it's the way social media is used that could be destructive, but is because, let's just go to the core that I think a lot of us agree on, because we as humans just kind of suck. I'm like, there's good and bad. I think, like, we look at social media and we blame it for the things that we do, but the reality is, like, violence existed before Facebook and MySpace dropped. Not before Xanga. Xanga did nothing bad. No, I'm just joking. Like, violence. I
was going to say Tom would never have supported people being violent, so MySpace is probably like the neutral good.
That was the neutral good back.
That's right.
Day. No, there was clearly never violence. There was obviously violence before social media. Like the argument Will and I joke all the time about video games. You're right. Nobody killed anybody before video games, Karen. No, I'm just like obviously violence existed before technology, before social media. People were mean to each other before social media. People said horrible things before social media. It didn't take social media to make people racist. They were definitely racist before that. I'm making us slightly uncomfortable by hitting hot topics, but don't worry, I'll bounce back.
Get it.
Like that all existed before social media, but there is still a question I don't know that we've really dealt with, which is that social media may not cause the problem. Social media might not actively, I think, make things worse. But if social media enables the bad sides of us in ways, is it allowing us to get worse? Have things gotten worse since social media? So there's my question. Chris will answer it perfectly for us. You know, like
me first.
Yeah, go for it.
Ding ding ding. Red button. So
red button.
I like how I don't actually. It's more like
know. I can make a red button. You got this. I'll figure it out.
Stop interrupting.
So I think that the tension that we've now created is a beautiful one because it reinforces that two things can be true at once. Yes.
Let's go.
So on one side is social media ruining the world? No. On the other side, is it enabling or giving us more of the opportunity to be the worst version of ourselves? Yes. So in this this tension hold, it's like, okay, the tool, the instrument itself is not inherently good or bad, but the last 10, 15 years of our social etiquette or just social issues in general, especially in the US, social media has been if not the leading agent of more negative impact. And people are losing jobs because of old tweets. People are sharing misinformation and affecting elections allegedly. And like there's been
I think
so many
finally said he did it happened. So I think we can say we're beyond allegedly with that one, but
that's a different conversation. But but it's been well documented that social media has in the more recent years played a major role in our volatile conversations and has inspires people to act differently or more negatively online in ways that they wouldn't act in person, or they don't actually act in person, and they've adapted this online persona to bully or poke fun or just stir the pot. I want to kind of backtrack though, and like, I guess add more things to think about and talk about. So the original aim of social networking online was supposed to be a mirror of networking in real life. So when you're networking with people in the real world, usually you're reconnecting with family and friends that you haven't seen in a while, or it's been a while that you've had a conversation with them, or you're meeting new people and you're building a new connection, or you're exchanging a certain supply of some sort, like I sell shoes and you need shoes, so here are shoes. Or hey, I do sales and you do sales, let's get acquainted and share trade secrets. So the art of networking for so long has been in-person experience. Then with social media, that was replicated in its best use case on social media platform. So now I can find a person in Japan and have a conversation instead of flying to Japan to make a new connection. I can send a friend a DM and he'll respond or she'll respond, versus me mailing a letter and it may or may not get to her. So that concept of time and access has been both a positive and a negative with social media. But also, I think as it kind of opens up the idea of we as people are people of conversation and relationship. We love to talk. We need to talk to each other and be known by other people, be appreciated by other people. So as you were kind of speaking to earlier, Josh, I think those attributes existing in a space where you don't feel the pressures and limitations of environment, facial expression, et cetera, it does. I think that there are more variables at play with the negative usage of social media. For example, if I'm having a conversation with you about Star Wars and I say Anakin was the worst villain in all of the I can see that you're laughing out of pity, or you're
trying to
like
hit the red button. I'm trying to pull the red button, man. I'm just
or you don't laugh and you immediately oppose my opinion and we have a 5-minute argument and it's over and we're still friends. But on social media,
maybe.
But on social media, use the floor.
Sorry, I got distracted. Continue.
But on social media, some of those barriers, if not most of those social cues and barriers, in theory, don't exist. So if I go in your comment section or DMs, I'm like, you suck. Like, I don't feel this like emotional attachment of I shouldn't have said that, or we aren't friends. Like, I can't just joke and banter that way. There's this, you feel emboldened to just like be someone you're not or someone you are. Actually,
letting it out a little bit.
Yeah, but so like even with that, there's still this, I guess, mixture of like the blame game. Like, yes, social media shouldn't give way to me doing that so easily, but I'm also the person willfully doing it.
Yeah.
So there's, yeah.
One of the things you're pointing at there, I think, is this difference in experiences between the physical or the real and the digital, this perception of real, right? Like, you spoke to some of those things like bringing people together, like interests, these storytellers, you know, a shoemaker coming together to a shoe buyer, right? Like, those things happened in real life, and it was really easy, I think, with lots of time in human history behind us, for folks to know what to do in those moments. Now you take all those same people, you throw them online, and you strip all of the tone, facial expressions, physical environment, etc. from it. And you're right. If you just go up to Josh and say, dude, you suck. On text, it just means you suck. But if you said it like Chris might say, it'd be like, dude, you suck. Like, who knows? Is Josh still going to take that well or poorly? Josh, what's your verdict? Do we
Probably
think you
well
suck,
in
or
both
is it...
cases, you know, because you know, I just take everything Chris says in text as sarcasm.
What? But
No,
like, what that means though is there's what that means for what we need to do and has started to happen. We see improvements on it, but like, we are only, let's say, I'll just use a round number and say 30 years into social media. It's probably younger than that, but we're 30 years into social media.
Yeah.
We don't have the social behaviors and etiquette established yet to make sure we can protect each other, be kind to each other, and not be the evil parts to each other, right? There's a norm around Reddit where if you write something that is sarcastic, you should put at the end of your sarcastic statement /S. That indicates you are being sarcastic. And I've seen this number of times where if you do not say that, someone's going to take you seriously. And you're going to get it downvoted straight out of the thread. And everybody's going to be like, what? I was being funny, right? But like, if you don't know. But that norm that has shown up in Reddit, I don't social outside of Reddit, so I don't know. Maybe it's in other places as well, right? But like that /S thing does 2 or 3 different things with 2 letters, with 2 symbols, right? It indicates you don't have to take it seriously. Therefore, you should hopefully not get offended, and you can have a laugh. You can joke back. You can engage it for the sarcasm that it is. You know, Josh and I, all 3 of us went to Bible college, and at Bible college, we had to study the Psalms, the Proverbs, the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. And I'll tell you, it was revealing to me when I heard about this sacred text that I had so revered all my life, but had never known there was sarcasm and euphemism and metaphor everywhere in the wisdom literature. You know, you just kind of assume this thing is like sacred and it's going to tell you the truest, you know, sagest advice. It's like, no, that's a joke about breasts. Like it just literally is. You know, these things showed up in the Bible, and we don't get that if you don't know what you're looking for. That's what we are looking to establish and need to be better about today. When we have kids growing up with this, we need to be teaching them, just like we used to say to a child, in public, we use our inside voices when we're inside. I don't seem to see many parents teaching kids that these days. But we need to be telling kids just the same. You need to be aware of sarcasm. You should use your /S. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just broke you both.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm more distracted by I don't see people teaching their kids that much these days. No, I get what you're saying. And I agree. Like now, and I think there's an element of this where we're getting into like social media is another form of like non-personal communication in some ways, so it's tough to read people. Though I think that falls apart a little bit in like massive video social media, right? Like TikTok and even Instagram, like Reels and stuff. It's becoming less text-based and more video-based. Now it's like 5-second video-based, you know? But and there's comments and stuff. I think it's true. I think the only thing I push back on is that I do think we have some etiquette stuff in place. I don't think we're as new as we like. The argument is always like we're new to the social media, and we are in the long scheme of things. But like we have etiquette. We don't call people trolls for no reason. You know, like it's like,
I mean, I've seen
I think the point that's happening is, if I could boil all of what we've been saying down a little bit, which is it's dangerous because, you know, obviously social media is a super simple problem. That's why nobody's been debating about it for a decade.
Let's fix it right now.
We'll fix it right now. It's what the High Tech Podcast does. But the thing that I think can boil down is I'm hearing a lot about like connection and communication. At the end of the day, social media at its core, that's what it's meant to do. Like to what Chris was getting back to in the beginning. I don't think it's lost that essence, but the reality is when you take all of humanity and go, here's a fun tool, folks, for communication and connection, it's going to highlight and probably up the volume of both the good and the bad. Like I think the point I'd like to get back to is that, is social media making it worse? Probably, but it's also making the better. Like it's highlighting both. The argument that I think we hear is that, well, it's because of social media all of this stuff is happening.
Right.
Yeah. All the stuff we've been talking about was happening before social media. Even the convincing people to say and do horrible things, like that all happened people said really dumb things in the years before social media. Just read. Anybody listening, just go read a book. Like people have said stupid stuff. It's not like we didn't do that. It's I think all it's doing is putting a lens to both the bad and good of humanity. And in some ways we're seeing all it, right? I think part of the reason our generation and generations to follow have a lot of anxiety about things is because we're not going to get super spiritual, theological on this podcast. But I will say, I'm not sure humanity was supposed to know everything that's going wrong in the earth. That's just my take. Right? Like, maybe we're anxious because we shouldn't know that country across the world just got annihilated.
Ignorance is bliss.
Endurance, like it's partially, and I think that's why we see it in the way we deal with larger problems and things like that. This is a whole different take of being like, are we actually solving problems, or do we just like jumping on a cause on social media? Because we have so many, there's just so much that we're seeing that we can't possibly process all of it. And I think it highlights all of that, and that's good and bad. I think we should be aware of issues going on around the world, but at the same time, I think social media gives us the fake perspective that we can do something about every issue that exists around the world.
Josh, I loved what you said a little bit ago, and I'm just gonna zoom in on one metaphor in there, like volume, right? I think some people are playing a mean song and some people are playing a good song, and social media is the volume. Like, more people are talking about it, the louder it is. The more people are talking about it, the louder it is. Like, and to that, actually, it makes me a little more comfortable with the fact that, like, hey, you're saying there's the good and there's the bad, and I think that's one of those things. Like, we put our social media out for this platform on so many different things, so we can hopefully reach more people, different audiences, whatever. I personally do not consume that many social medias because it's too loud. The volume is there's just too much input for me. I don't go to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, X, Reddit, all the time, all of them, and there's more than that, TikTok, Snapchat, I don't. I can't personally take in that much volume, so I try and turn it down a little bit. And sometimes I'm on Reddit, I'm like, I need to get off this too. But that's all, that's all the part of the process. And I love that idea. I think we all agree there's good, there's bad, but what is different is it didn't used to get this loud. It was not possible to get this loud, and now social media has made it really strong. So I think the thing we can all learn, and we should be helping the younger generations learn, is to control the volume. That's one of the things that's coming out with the laws and the attempts to like change legal age limits and stuff like that, which I think is a joke, right? There's already legal age limits all over the internet. You can't go on an alcohol website without being 21. Click, I'm 21. You just enter, but that's why, that is why they're trying to reach for more laws to control this stuff, because kids don't know how to keep the hand on the volume. And I think that's really important. Chris, as a professional in this space, what has it been like? I'm hoping you haven't, but what has it been like, to receive or see like the negativity around a brand you might be working for? Like, have you had harassment and mean DMs and stuff for businesses and things you're working for?
I see it every other day.
You just made.
Every other day, I am
mostly high tech podcast related. Just people going.
Actually, no. I see it. I see it the least with high tech podcasts. But I definitely see it a lot in my like day to day, and it's actually like a good segue because it helps to call back to this tension we're having. But yeah, I've had personal like comments and DMs to my social media profiles with either spam or weirdos or people that actually possibly just don't like me and they decided to let me know. So I've had my fair share of that, but also as in my day job, as I'm helping to manage the accounts of other clients, I every day there's over 100 comments, and about 60% of them are negative or inappropriate.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and it's my job to like filter through and hide and delete and respond and like block people. Like it's a whole part of my job of like I have to manage the conversations happening around this brand so that the brand image isn't like poisoned, if you will. So yeah, I've had my fair share, and it is pretty disheartening. Like I've been very intentional to have a resolve and like a barrier or I guess like a wall of like I will be on social for this amount of time, and if I'm using it at work, it's for these reasons. And once I'm done, I'm done. And then if it's personal, it's like short and sweet, and then I'm off and I'm enjoying life. And that's helped me to not get so consumed by like the doom scrolling and the like intense comment sections and comment threads. So yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And one of the things that I think is I think there's a difference. You have a difference in quantity, right? What I'm trying to sneak up to here with my own thoughts is like my personal social media. I will admit the privilege. I think of like never being attacked. I cannot remember being harassed in my social media experience. I've seen negative things, been hurt by things on social media, but like I have not had someone come to the High Tech Podcast inbox and been like, "You guys suck. Why do you record?" I've not had someone slip into my LinkedIn and be like, "You're not even a professional. Why are you on here? Your profile picture is right." Like I've been very lucky not to have been the target of that. But why I was asking is like I can only imagine brands, right? That you're working behind, you're representing brands. Like I don't want to envy Coca-Cola's social media manager. Like that brand is getting so much contact. And if you're saying 60-40, could you imagine just being hated on all day? That's the job.
Yeah. Nickelback social media
like
brand,
what you're,
you know? That guy's got a hard job.
Yeah.
Look at his graph. I'm sorry.
Perfect. No, but that's why I asked. It's like because you know, if most folks only deal with their own personal social media, they may not know what it's like on that receiving the negative stuff that's coming in, the DMs, the comments, etc. Like, and it kind of twings on my little side, like you said, like hiding comments, deleting comments, whatever. I'm like, oh, that's so tough, right?
Yeah.
Because social media, the whole push from Elon from Twitter to X and all that stuff, like some of these things and the legal issues in the past few years about social media being a public space. And if it's public space, we as Americans typically want to stay in front of the First Amendment and don't want our speech impinged upon. But I don't think we've settled that debate. I don't think we know that social media is a public forum, right? It is owned and operated by a private entity. And that private entity can do whatever the hell it wants to it. You know, like I think I think it's fine to hide and delete comments, but it does make me a little upset. I'm like, oh, I don't know. If I made the comment, I wouldn't want my comment deleted if it was constructive at the very least, right? I'm not. If some people are harassing or being inappropriate, that's very different from just constructive or negative or bad reviews, right? But
yeah.
I mean, my key takeaway was somebody needs to go yell at Will in a social media comment now. You know, he's never been publicly.
Whoever listened this long is going to slide into the inbox like, so Will, stupid purple shirt.
I was gonna say, if you want it, well, I can speak from experience. All you really have to be is an 18-year-old in a pop punk band online, and you can really get a lot of solid comments. That's a different story for a different time. I think the point, though, coming back to things.
Next episode.
We bounce around a lot on different things. But I think the reason we're talking about a lot of this, right, is both in education, I think in learning and business, there's a lot of different takes on how to handle social media. And I think if we come from a perspective that social media just makes things worse, and if we get rid of it, the problem will go away, that's hogwash. I don't know if I've said that very often on the podcast. You know, man, Josh is getting angry. He said hogwash. That's ridiculous. Like the problem is not social media itself. It is still, I think, what Chris and I came back to on the last episode, which is it's still at the end of the day us. That's the key. Now, I think brings out bad things. Will doesn't seem to like it. I'm waiting for Will to come back and go, no, social media is the problem. But like, I mean, I'm sorry, man. Like, come on, like
no. I agree with you. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, like for those who would push back on it, I mean, like look back at history to like Roman Empire, Greeks, they all basically fell apart because of people sucking. I mean, like at the end of the day,
100%.
like Greek democracy didn't work because everybody couldn't agree on things, and they didn't have Facebook. Like it's that problem has existed before social media. I do think social media allows us to make it worse, but we're never going to get rid of the problem just by cutting back on digital technology and the internet. That's not going to get rid of the problem until we start dealing with the core of the problem, which is how we interact with people, how we negative connections happen, how abuse can happen, how corruption can happen. Like, I love that we like to think, put aside your feelings politically about whatever happens, but I love to think that our world thinks, oh my gosh, people trying to mess with politics never happened before Facebook. Bullcrap.
It's happened every election. Someone has tried to influence it
before. So like that problem is not. I think the key is not removing social media entirely from our business, from our classrooms, from whatever. It's finding the ways that it does accentuate the bad and finding the ways it accentuates the good, and teaching the next generation to try to combat those side of things, to figure out what social media takes away and gives, and to figure out how we can, social media in many ways can take away that social interaction. So how do we make sure it's not just social media and we have other social interaction as well, but not entirely removing social media either, because there are a lot of kids who find really great connections through social media or through gaming. I mean, I found friends we went on just an entire Mexico trip a couple months ago with people we met through a video game that we suck at. Like that stuff is good and should be brought out. And we don't have to wait 3 weeks for an entire boat to drop our letters. Like we can communicate to people across the globe very quickly. And that's not a negative thing. That's a good thing. Yeah. If we deal with how we negatively communicate, how those dynamics, a deeper level issue. So I've spoken long enough to see if Will would forget his idea or not. So now it's
I got him. Can you? So first is the joke. Can you imagine Greek Facebook, like what all their profile statues would look like? Like they'd all be statues. Like every Greek Facebook profile picture would be like just
it would have been amazing. Yeah, exactly.
But they'd all be like marble busts. They wouldn't have
and people would be totally judging each other's pictures, be like, man, look how ripped David is. I'm not as ripped as him, I need
to get a better sculptor. My bust is not what I want it to be. Yes, a statue book, that would be the name of it. It would be Facebook statue book. So that's the joke. I was laughing and snickering myself trying to keep that under wraps. But when I was all pensive a bit ago, my point was that I was kind of wrestling with was, well, if we are the problem, right? And Facebook or social media is not the problem, but we can't be trusted with it. Shouldn't we get rid of the social media? Like the options are we get better or we get rid of social media in a binary sense. We either get better and we treat each other better, we learn the rules of the road and we drive according to the rules, or get rid of social media. And you know what?
Question.
Does anybody know which side of that fence I stand on?
So
I don't think humans are going to get better.
Oh, you just opened
I'm
an
gonna
entire
interject.
can of worms. This is gonna be
I'm
great.
gonna interject
I'm
here.
ready. Hold on. Red button, Chris. Hit the red button. Hit the red button. There we go. Okay.
So I think Will, actually, could you restate your question just so I've understood it?
In the simplest sense, right? We've been wrestling with what's the problem, and I think we all do agree it's social media itself is not the problem. We the humans are the problem. But if we're the problem, how can we actually fix it? I believe the two ways to fix it would be making the humans better to each other or getting rid of social media.
Okay.
Can we get rid of social media? Do we? Is that an
Got
option?
So-
I'm in. I'm first on the boat to jump off and just ditch social media.
So two things. So first, I would argue the stance of we are the problem and not social media. It's not necessarily true. I think we've agreed that
false dichotomy.
People are problematic, but social media can also be a problem. It's not just virtuously good. So I think that's one thing to kind of like reframe. Like, I have my issues, but also like the tool that is social media can present bad things and conversations and situations that otherwise wouldn't exist. Doesn't mean that it's inherently bad, but it can be an agent of badness. That's a word. Anyways,
I mean, that's what we're going to call the title of this episode, Agent of Badness. That's officially the title.
So that's my first. I wish I had a cape so I could just. So that's one thing. That's more of my opinion and how I would kind of think about that. The second thing is, with this question, if we do, key term is if we do agree that we can't be trusted with social media, then what should we do with it? That presumption that we can't be trusted with it, I think, is its own argument and debate. Because I would think, in the same way with TV and radio and newspaper, we can be trusted with it, with these mediums, but we also have to hold each other accountable in the same way that we would every other thing. So I would argue that, actually, I would just say this: we can and we can't be trusted. It's slightly more complicated. So with that said, I think that for the sake of social media, and it's not going anywhere, there can and should be more regulation and accountability of the powers that be that make social channels and give us this social environment online, while also there is a responsibility of each person to regulate and monitor the way that they act and behave within the medium. In the same way that you shouldn't go on TV and like bomb a bank, or be treasonous, is the same way that you shouldn't go on Facebook and say that you're gonna hit the president. There is there's an element of personal responsibility to
personal responsibility. We can't even teach kids not to be loud out inside. I mean,
Well,
this is apparently a very real problem for Will. I don't know what happened recently.
I
but
just
this is-
spent way too many hours on airplanes and in pubs and
this is
around
a fresh problem for him. He doesn't normally
children
bring this up during
everywhere.
podcast episodes.
I love kids, but
do you?
when they're loud, I'm not interested.
Word.
So we're coming up on a long episode, but I want to jump into two things Chris has said. And also, did Chris now just notice? Is that what happened at this exact moment?
Did you just
I think it
notice?
did. Yeah, he
I
just
just
noticed.
realized.
Yeah, for those who
I
don't
told
know, we're
you.
just listening to the audio. I just changed Chris's name in our system
About
to Agent of
5
Badness.
minutes ago.
Yeah, it was a little
Oh my
while
gosh.
ago. It was mid your conversation.
Word.
I wanna jump into two things you said, Chris, that I think are interesting. First of all, you're talking, and this is genuinely a question of like clarification, not me leading you into an argument I want to make. I do that sometimes. The question is like, so social media, there are things that social media itself does that wouldn't have happened otherwise. I think it's kind of what you said. That's a bad paraphrase of what you said, but so like give an example, right? Like let's get tangible for the listener here for a second, because we're very philosophical about social media. What is something specific when you're saying that? What are you thinking?
So a thing that social media does that didn't exist before that we wouldn't do otherwise.
Yeah.
Is that what you
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm asking.
That is a good question.
Today, you got the deep fake issue of just like literally visually being other people on social media.
But nobody ever masqueraded as someone else before social media.
Oh, got me.
It was like, but actually, before social media, people just before the internet, and they could track you down by cameras. Is that John Mulaney who makes that joke? They used to rob banks dressing up in their Sunday best with their net. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like, did crime get worse, or did it just take on a different form?
That is a really good question, Josh, because I can't think off the top of my head nor do I currently assert that the features of social media are like purely new in its nature. Like the ability to comment or message or post a photo or video or have a profile, like these things existed before social media. These things were happening before social media.
You know what is new in it? I'm pretty sure on this. The record, right? No one was writing down everything. That like never in history has all of the things we have said been captured. I think that might be the only thing that's novel to social media.
That's a valid point. Some people like before Facebook, could have people gone back and found something somebody said a decade ago and they'd be judged on it, right?
If they hand wrote it down, maybe, like.
And I'm the one who asked this question, and even probably came from the other perspective, but maybe another dynamic of this. And actually, honestly, I think here's my take on it. I don't think social media, other than I still got to think through Will's thing. Although is that a larger problem of the internet and not social media? The thing though is it comes back to Will's volume thing. It's not just volume and the amount that you can see, but it's the impact and the amount of people who can give their perspective on something, right? Before social media, the entire world could not give their perspective on what somebody did in California or in New York or in Pennsylvania. And now with social media, we are able to all give our opinions on everything. And that's not something that we couldn't do beforehand. But like us having opinions on things is not new. It's just, it gives us a public space to say it. Like that's, and so is it more about social media upping the volume both on what we see and what we're able to tell each other, like what we're able to do and the impact, right? Like somebody could have scammed one person, before social media and the internet, but now they could hit a whole bunch of people, right? It's a volume and impact. which still kind of brings us back to the question Will has, which is like, if people are and that's the one place I would push that. Like, I don't know, social media in of itself as a tool, separate from us as humans, I do call neutral to a certain extent. Like, it has a tendency to push communication and connection and different things, and that can be pushed either direction. Like, even the algorithms that push certain content to certain people could be used positively. They don't have to be used negatively. I love how
wait, what?
I love how we talk about the algorithm like it's just an entity on its own. Like, somebody programmed that thing. It's not like it just, even though it seems like Zuckerberg forgets where everything goes, somebody knows where it's going. So I don't know. I'm not sold either way yet on this. I think it still keeps coming back though to what you're talking about, Chris, which is like, yes, there's some responsibility, though we could have a whole nother long conversation about do I trust the powers to be to make regulations for social media? They've done such a good job up to this point. But I do think at the end of the day, the big thing coming out of it is we do have personal responsibility for how we interact with it, right? And I think the perspective of just completely removing it, I don't think is realistic. Without also abusing other rights. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the question could be like,
that's a thought, right?
Do we just rip this thing from people, like, I don't know that's gonna happen. So we have to still deal with that problem, personal responsibility, and I don't think we get to cop out and say it's all social media's problem. That if Facebook didn't exist, we would be better people. No. I don't know. Crusade happened to be Facebook.
Nope. Have you heard of Wars? Just saying.
No, those didn't exist before Grand Theft Auto, Chris.
Okay.
No violence. Sorry. Okay, we got kind of political and high tech for a hot second. That's
okay.
That's it. Anyway, with the last bit of time, we didn't actually coordinate an app or anything we want to recommend to people. We don't always do that, but let's each of us go around. What's the favorite piece of tech we have used in the last 2 weeks?
Wow. Okay. You ready?
I'm gonna love this. It's gonna be something like super old school. Like Will just used a can opener.
A pencil sharpener.
Yeah.
No, on my trip, we two quick things. Honorable mention: an app called Distiller, right? You can use it to track what you drink, liquor, which was very useful when I was in Ireland. I had over a dozen different distilleries. Useful, but besides that, that's not really it. Google Photo albums, things like that, like all of them have it. iCloud, whatever, Apple's got it, but like Google Photo albums are great. I've done this in a couple different trips I've done now where like my mom and other people back home can't be around. I just love, like, I can make a quick album. I can invite the other people on my trip to it and we can all upload photos to it. And then I can send that link like to my mom, in-laws, people back home, and folks can keep up. So I know some people probably come up with something. I think it's called Facebook. It does that. I think everybody can just follow you and you post to it or something. I don't use that newfangled
like a
stuff,
social media platform or something.
You know what's great of my Google Photo albums? People can like heart the photos and they can ask, comment on the photos.
Public. They can make that more social, if you will.
I just used that on my trip and it was awesome. So that's Google Photo albums.
Okay, nice. Mr. Agent of Badness. What are you?
So I actually have two apps that I've been in love with the past few months, but I'll probably do like a tiered response. So in second place, the Sheets app has revolutionized the way that I get gas and fast food.
That's
on
so
the road.
specific to only a certain group of people.
Isn't Josh the one who told you about it?
Yes,
for something. Yeah, gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Sheets is a regional made-to-order gas station restaurant thing, location space. It's red. It's in like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Josh, West Virginia. I don't know. Do you know all the states you're in?
Minnesota,
They're in.
yeah.
But
Michigan. You just open in Michigan. There you go.
Michigan. There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all. So Sheets, the Sheets app, the Sheets
Yeah,
mobile
yeah.
app has. Okay, great.
Okay, what's your other tier? I'm not moving from that too quickly, Chris.
Please
but,
go
like,
up from there.
you know our brand, and that's not the brand we're pushing at the moment.
So anyways, my actual favorite app or tool as of late has been SeatGeek. Because I've been going to a lot of shows and events and concerts this year, and Ticketmaster sucks. So having SeatGeek as an option for concert going and actually using a digital ticket instead of a physical one has been so convenient, so fast. So yeah.
Well, put it up longer so Chris can clip it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm not that old.
So you get it, Chris. I believe in you.
So yeah, SeatGeek is
all right.
Has been
Change
my
your lives, folks.
thing
Get those tickets
lately.
Wow.
That's why you were at
Okay.
Usher.
Yeah, because of SeatGeek. Yeah.
Swartzy, what you got for us?
I mean, I know
You
this
asked the
is
question
for-
you've had the most time.
I know I had the most time to think about it, but I was too distracted by all your answers. And I've been desperately trying to think of something else other than what I want to say, which is because I know it's a problem for me. Notion AI has like hit another level right now, folks.
Plug. Clip.
Let's just hit it. Let's just hit it.
Yeah, let's just hit it. I know we're affiliates, but we've always talked about this. We're only affiliates, and we promised we were going to talk about Notion a lot more on the podcast because we've already talked about it a ton. But they hit like another level the other day. I was like typing something into Notion, and I use the AI tool a lot for like reducing text down, or I use like the improve writing thing they have in there because I'll use it to like get a different take on how I could have written what I wrote, and usually it's like a melding of the two, not just taking what Notion has. But they had an option that asked me, do you want to mind map this or like workflow chart it? They now have the option to like just I'll write out text and highlight it and it'll turn it into like a diagram. Like
wow, that's crazy.
That's kind of cool. Like they've kind of hit like another level, and actually like now the way it works in the text, like, well, I don't know how much we don't use it much in Hardest Tech because of just not wanting to. I pay for it personally. We don't want to pay for Hardest Tech. It no longer does like you like type something in on the page, and it no longer does like a prompt when you're doing it out. You like write out your prompt. It'll actually live edit the page to show you. So like if I ask it to like rewrite something or like tweak something, it'll actually like show where it's crossing out stuff that I originally had written and like rewriting it, and it'll compare it next to each other. So I can like see it in the same page. And like figure out if I want to tweak this or like rewrite or like a few different ideas or like, and then I can go back and forth with it in the page as like a basically rewriting assistant. It's kind of awesome. Like they've really upgraded some stuff in it recently. So I dig it. I'm really enjoying
Notion
it, so.
Getting better.
Yeah, there's my take. I felt like we needed one productivity thing, you know. You're throwing out alcohol apps and Google Photos, and Chris is over here like, I found a gas station app.
I thought he was gonna fall off his chair. That would be gold.
So anyway, that was our take on social media and what our vibes are on it. I'm sure we'll have more takes on it. Chris, thank you for joining us again for a second week. It has been fantastic having you on the podcast. And I'm sure this will not be the last time you're on the podcast, but if any of you want to talk to Chris more often, just hit up High Tech Podcast social media handles because Will and I barely do anything anymore. Really seriously, I like logged on to our social media stuff the other day to like look at something, and I was like, oh man, I don't even know what's going on here. I'm just posting things. I have no idea what's happening. Like,
so much content.
There's so much content happening. So yeah, make sure you check it out. If you're ever curious, you're like, I don't know which episode to listen to, or check out something. I think Chris does a great job of clipping stuff for us. And so you can check out small clips and information on there as we're doing more stuff in the High Tech Podcast. With that said, though, this has been episode 164. On next week of the High Tech Podcast, we have no idea what's going to happen. Will's been gone for basically forever. No, I'm just joking. He's been gone for like 2 weeks. And we have some stuff in the pipeline for what we're doing, but we don't know exactly what's coming after this episode just yet. So it'll be a surprise for you next week. We're about to go and go to a local, watering hole, if you will, and determine some of those things. So we'll see what happens. But make sure to check us out next week in the High Tech Podcast for more information. All right, folks, that's a wrap on another week. Empowering minds,
embracing tech.
Cheers.
Cheers.